Good morning. I'm Doreen Ida. I've been in the food business for 29 years, and 27 of those years have been with Nestlé. 2 of the years have been with Kraft. I started in marketing and have spent most of the time actually on the nutrition businesses. I worked from baby to healthcare to sports nutrition. And in addition to the nutrition business, I've also worked on various categories from beverages to frozen, and most recently to the confections and snacks division. I joined the division about 4 years ago as the head of marketing and was just recently promoted back in this past September to president of the confections division. So I have very exciting news to share with you today. I'm sure you remember the chart that Paul showed with all of the market shares, and there was probably one category that stood out because it didn't have double digits, and that was confections at 6%. So what I'm going to share with you, because I'm sure it's on your mind, right? How do you win with that? So I'm going to answer that, and there's one thing I want you to keep in mind as I go through my presentation and think about the story of David and Goliath, okay? And I think when you see the presentation, you'll understand in terms of how we are able to win in this category. So first of all, this is a very, very attractive category. As you saw, it's the largest category where Nestlé competes, $19 billion category. And it has shown consistent growth, 5.2% CAGR since 2009. And according to Nielsen, it's in the top 5 recession-proof categories, which is phenomenal. And the industry average for store brands or private label is 17%. Penetration for store brands in this category is 3.8%, so very low store brand penetration. And as we look to the future, it looks very good, $5.8 billion growth over the next 5 years. And this comes from the National Confectioners Association and the Euromonitor. I also wanted to talk a little bit about how the confectionery category is a bit different than some of our other categories. First of all, is what we call expandable consumption. What that means is when products are sold on promotion, they don't take away from non-promotional sales. And you all know this, right? When confections are in your cupboard, they get consumed. And so what that translates to in the marketplace is the benefit of having multiple points of interruption in a store. The other thing is the variety-seeking nature of the consumers in this category. The average consumer switches between 14 to 15 brands. So that's how many brands are in their consideration set. When you take a look at our other Nestlé USA categories, it's typically like 3 to 4 different brands where consumers may be switching. Again, 14 to 15 brands. So the nature of the category is such that there's a lot of heavy media being spent by the top competitors to get their brands into the consideration set, as well as an extensive number of products that are on the shelf. There are 21,000 SKUs in the confectionery category. And that's to really fulfill this desire for variety seeking. It's an impulsive category. 70% of the everyday sales are unplanned. And so that means displays and distribution where consumers want to consume or purchase confectionery is very important. Food is emotional. Candy is even more emotional. If you take a look at the purchase decision tree for confections, number 1 is it within this brand consideration, the 14 to 15 brands that I want to consider? And number 2, it's what am I in the mood for? And then 3 is price. And we know about the increasing awareness of nutrition and health by our consumers. It's really important to reinforce that confectionery is a special treat. We break the category up into chocolate and sugar, and as you see here, chocolate is twice the size of sugar. Both are growing, chocolate a little bit more than sugar. The dynamics are a bit different in that in chocolate, the top 2 competitors make up 70% of the market share. And if you take a look at the top 15, 20 brands, they're pretty much the same brands that I remember when I was growing up. And then on sugar, what's different is it's more fragmented. The top 2 competitors make up 30% of the sugar segment. And while sugar confectionery skews younger, it's still very broadly appealing. 70% of sugar confectionery is consumed by adults 18 years and older. Our Nestlé USA confectionery sales are close to $1 billion. And in order for us to win, we focus on a select number of brands, 7 brands. We call them our strategic brands, and you see them here. Strategic chocolate and strategic sugar. And you take a look at the growth, they have very, very solid growth, and you'll see the numbers later. And then we have 21 other brands that are in what we call the others, flat to declining. So when you take a look at the entire Nestlé USA portfolio, the division is growing 3% CAGR from 2011 to 2013. The strategic brands are growing 9%. Over that same period of time, the category growth was half of that. So our strategic brands are growing twice the rate of the category. And that's translating to market share growth. Again, take a look at the strategic brands from 2011 to 2013. We've grown 30 basis points, and on the sugar, 20 basis points. Now keep in mind, a 10 basis point growth in a $19 billion category is huge. And for us, because of our share position to grow those 10 basis points, we have to outpace the category by at least 70%. So this is tremendous, and we're very, very pleased with this performance. And like all of the other presenters, we follow the same strategic framework, and I'm going to highlight just the ones that you see here. Talked about portfolio management, that being a very important part of how we win in the marketplace. You see here the first on the top, I have to look at the screen now, the top left, the invest to growth brands and the defend brands are our strategic brands. You notice, because typically when you go to that bottom corner, the question is, well, aren't those the ones that you're going to get rid of or fix? But here it says maintain. Well, why does it say that? Because these brands are still accretive to Nestlé USA. Another way that we win in the marketplace is what we call transformational innovation. Thinking about the story of David and Goliath, what we do is we break the rules. We challenge the conventional thinking in the category. As I mentioned, the top competitors spend a massive amount of money in media, close to $1 billion just in TV. That's pretty close to our entire sales. So how do we win? We break the rules. Second, we make it newsworthy. It doesn't make sense to try to compete with that head on, but in the age of digital technology, we have the opportunity to have consumers and influencers spread the word about our products and our brands for us, and we leverage that. And lastly, it's not good enough to grow market share. We have to also bring consumption into the category. That's the way that we make our innovation stick. When we do all of these three things, we call that transformational innovation. So I'm going to give you some examples of that. Prior to the launch of Skinny Cow into the confectionery category, there was a lot of skepticism about, can you really have better for you confections? Well, in 2011, we launched Skinny Cow into the confectionery category. In fact, I think they're in your goodie bags if you haven't tried them. I have one of our newest ones called the Skinny Cow Divine Caramel Chocolates. And what we've seen since we've launched is a 62% growth in our Skinny Cow business. We've been able to grow that business year over year. And we do it by delivering great taste, leveraging our R&D, and we deliver a sizable eat, so they're not like tiny, tiny little portions that don't satisfy you, and we deliver it within a certain calorie limit, in this case 130 calories. And with this, we've been able to bring new buyers into the category. We have from one of our largest customers where it's shown that 31% of our sales actually contributed to growth of the category. And as I mentioned, leveraging our R&D network, and when we take a look at our repeat rate, which is one way of really seeing how well our products stick, we've been able to have higher repeat rates than the average new products that have been launched in the category. And we were also able to win the Nielsen 2013 New Product Award. Another rule we broke is the seasons. Prior to the launch of Crunch Girl Scouts, there were only 4 seasons. Valentine's Day, Easter, Halloween, and Christmas. Those were the 4 seasons where there was promotion in the confectionery category. Well, what we did is we partnered with Girl Scouts and we leveraged their limited edition equity, and we launched what we call the 5th season. Those of you who aren't familiar with Girl Scouts, it's an organization that just celebrated its 100th anniversary last year. About 1 out of every 2 women are either currently involved in the organization through their daughters or were a Girl Scout themselves. So amongst women, it has tremendous emotional value and reach. And we took their top flavors and we put them into their top flavors of cookies. I should back up a little bit. So the way this works with the Girl Scout organization is the girls sell cookies every year. And these cookies have really become part of the American tradition. They only sell them for about 2 months. And believe it or not, these girls sell over $750 million worth of cookies in those 2 months. And people stock up on these cookies because you know that if you don't buy them in those 2 months where the girls are selling them maybe in front of a grocery store or maybe your neighbor, you're not going to be able to buy those cookies for a whole nother year. So that has been the model of these Girl Scout cookies. So we took their top flavors and the fact that they do so well with this limited event, annual event, and we brought that to the confectionery category. And in the first month, our top flavor, which is the Thin Mints, Rob talked a little bit about it in his category, it outsold the number 8 competitor in the category. Now keep in mind that number 8 competitor is a $500 million brand. We also expanded the category. 90% of the buyers of the Crunch Girl Scouts were new to the Crunch franchise. And again, repeat rates were fantastic, and we were also received the New Product Award based on 40,000 consumer votes. We see an opportunity to make confectionery permissible. And here are examples of the various things that we're doing on our established brands to make sure that moms can feel good about the products that they're consuming for themselves or giving to their children. So for instance, making sure that we have appropriate portion sizes on our packaging, reclosable packaging where we can, and also communicating the nutritionals on front of pack. That's across all of our everyday SKUs today. We're also starting to take out and substitute out the artificial flavors. In fact, in your bag you'll have our mini chewy sweet tarts, and you'll see that we have natural flavors in that product. And we launched Randoms, Wonka Randoms, which is a product from Nestlé UK. This will be the first major launch into the category with all natural colors and flavors. And that is just starting to show up on the shelves right now. And lastly, we'll continue to leverage our R&D network. We have a phenomenal network. It's one of our competitive advantages that we have as Nestlé. That's how we created such a great product with our Skinny Cow, and we're going to continue to leverage that. And then the last example I wanted to share with you is one of the most exciting that we're experiencing today, and that is challenging a major leader in the category. The #1 brand in this category is a $1.7 billion franchise and owns a format of cups. Well, we launched, being David, we launched in the Super Bowl our Butterfinger peanut butter cup. And as you see here, the results have been fantastic. In the month of the Super Bowl, we doubled the market share on our Butterfinger franchise. The repeat rates, while the repeat rates were great on Skinny Cow and on the Crunch Girl Scouts, they're phenomenal on our Butterfinger cup. And in the first 12 weeks since the launch, where we're in distribution, we are outselling the #1 brand off the shelf. So again, fantastic results. I also wanted to point out that the product has our Nestlé Cocoa Plan, and also from a nutritional standpoint, meets the nutritional profiling requirements that we are placing on our confectionery products. I mentioned the Cocoa Plan. That's just one of the many initiatives that we have in terms of connecting with consumers while creating shared value. And one of the things that we're very proud of is because we are putting the Cocoa Plan and sourcing the beans to cover the sales of our mainstream brands like Crunch and Butterfinger peanut butter cups, we actually have more sales coverage with sustainable cocoa than our competitors, despite the size of our competitors. And the other way I mentioned before is we have to really get earned media. So we have to have digital and social marketing in order to have the consumers really talk about our brands and products. So we invest in this area to amplify the programs that we're having in the marketing. And as you see here, we have had solid performance across all of the indicators in the confectionery business. We are accretive to Nestlé USA. 3% CAGR on our sales, 2.4% on our operating profit, and 350 basis point improvement on our return on invested capital. Now you may be asking, well, why not show 2011? Prior to 2012, our assets were included as part of our baking business. So this is the only time that we can compare apples to apples with just the confectionery business. And if you go back 2 years prior to that, a few years prior to that, you see that we were in a turnaround situation back in 2009. We made some tough decisions to trim the portfolio to increase the bottom line. And what you've seen here is a 790 basis point improvement in profit from 2009 to 2012, and again, continued profit growth. So in summary, I think you see that we've had tremendous success, particularly behind our strategic brands, growing faster and gaining market share. We'll continue to do transformational innovation, continue to look for ways to break the rules. We are very, very much committed behind the permissible confectionery in this category. We want to help consumers make good decisions about what they're consuming and what they're feeding their kids, and continuing to leverage our R&D expertise for more permissible products. And I think all in all, you'll agree that the future for confectionery is bright. Thank you.
Thank you, Doreen. So we're back on track from a timing standpoint. This is really good news. Yes, first question.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about
please identify yourself.
Oh, sorry, Andrew Lazar at Barclays. If you could just talk a little bit about the go-to-market capabilities. Hershey obviously has a sort of like a hybrid DSD system, a lot of its own feet on the street in the stores, particularly in the C-store, which is a real, I think, structural advantage for them. How do you go to market? Is it through distributors? And is that something that you can use to, I guess, compete from a go-to-market perspective effectively over time?
We leverage our Nestlé sales force and everything through our normal warehouse. What's interesting in terms of C-store, we actually punch above our weight in C-store and have higher market share in the C-store channel, which again is surprising given, as you mentioned, the differences in distribution. So we, I think from a, again, competitive advantage standpoint, leveraging everything in terms of the resources that Nestlé has to offer has worked well for us.
And then just a quick follow-up. Have you seen any change, call it over the past 6-9 months, in just the overall level of competitive activity in the chocolate space. You've obviously ramped up your efforts. You've got what seems like additional effort coming from Mars after 5 years of frankly just paying off debt from buying Wrigley. Seems like they're looking to be more innovative. Have you seen that? And if so, is it helping the overall category from a growth rate perspective, or can it be somewhat destructive? Thank you.
We've definitely have seen increase in the consumer-facing marketing activities, particularly in media spend. I would say that that's probably been the most evident. A lot of the line extensions that we've seen are pretty much cost of business in this category because of that variety-seeking nature. We've always seen a tremendous amount of line extension activity. I think that one of the things that we've heard from our customers that have been very positive is they felt that we're really bringing very new breakthrough innovation to the category versus just a lot of the line extensions. But to that point, I expect that the competitors will continue to be, very innovative themselves, and we just need to continue to stay ahead.
Yes.
Hi there, it's James Holly here from Berenberg. Just on, I wonder if you could talk about the premium market in the US and whether you see opportunity now for Nestlé in the premium chocolate market, leveraging on your European expertise, particularly as Mars and Hershey aren't as sort of overweight that category.
Yeah, I think that the chart that Paul showed earlier in terms of what's happening, particularly in the United States, in terms of the income levels, in terms of the squeezing of the middle and the top and bottom, I think certainly points to opportunities to ensure that we have products that fulfill both those needs.
Do you have any plans to launch any?
Yeah, well, one of the things I think in one of the Q&A, I think it might be in full year publication, Paul Bulke, our CEO, actually expressed, sort of like frustration that a brand like a Maison Caillé could be very, very well a global brand, and that's something that we need to be working on. So, question? Start.
So in your market share data, you show the strategic brands obviously growing, but the rest of the business is obviously declining. So your overall market share is flat. It looks like the rest of the business is declining at about 6 or 7% per annum, if the 9 for the strategic brands is right. So how long are you happy for that to happen? Because if that keeps going, right, your share is just going to stay flat for years and years and years.
Well, it hasn't, it's growing.
Yeah, as I mentioned, in terms of the other part of the portfolio, it's accretive to Noosa. The absorption of fixed overhead that those brands play are important. And I would say that I guess I can kick it over to the finance people as well in terms of their point of view, but it plays a very solid role in our portfolio.
John?
I think Nestlé typically said they want to be 1 or 2 in categories. You are a pretty distant third. Just wondering, what do you think about acting as a consolidator in that US market? I know it's pretty consolidated anyway, or even thinking about an outright exit of the US confectionery market.
I think I'll take that one. I mean, at the end of the day, this comes back to if you look at the charts here with regard to how profits have improved. This is exactly what we're talking about for a number of other categories. But this was a desperate category that a number of years ago, I think, Rob, 6, 7 years ago, we actually were at the point of saying fix it or divest it. And this is a classic, and yet again, to respond to another question, how long does it take? What's the decision-making process? We could see very positive progress, so that now this is extremely accretive, not just to Noosa, but to the broader base group. We've dramatically increased shareholder value, and then to your point, really, we're now at a point where we can either decide to continue doing what we're doing, where we're growing, we're outperforming the competitive set, so we have that option. There could be an acquisition opportunity for us, or there could be a joint venture. There's lots of opportunities. But I think the good thing is what we've demonstrated is our ability over a period of time to get category into a position where we have better options for the group, and that's ultimately where we are today. Nothing decided, but it's great when you can launch something like Butterfinger cups, and the main issue that we've got today on Butterfinger cups is we can't make enough. We're at a good place on that.
Okay, next question. Story, do you have another one?
Sorry, can I just come back on that? Because the comment Paul made there is that you're growing faster than the competition, but the market share tells you you're not doing that. You are doing that in some parts of the business, but not in the business overall. So how should we think about that?
Well, you should think about it in the way we probably just explained it, in the fact that overall profits have improved dramatically. And a couple of other things that we're actually doing on the strategic brands. It's really important the strategic brands are growing. I mean, for example, we had a brand called Bit of Honey, yeah, and we've just disposed of that brand. We sold that because we couldn't see actually a future for Bit of Honey in the business. And it was taking up time, and it was taking up complexity, and so we sold that. Actually, what we did is we also released the ability to produce more of our strategic brands by getting rid of a Bit of Honey. So our primary driver is, as long as the strategic brands are growing and doing well, then we're very, very happy. My numbers are slightly different from yours. Maybe you can show me yours and I'll show you mine. But I think we're I think we're in a place whereby we do have some growth. I think it's about 10 on averaging about 10 to 15 basis points a year. But it doesn't matter, because the underlying driver is that as we grow strategic brands. Now, one of the things we did, going back to the annals of history, for example, in our UK business, is we focused on a thing called the Magnificent Seven. And actually, we put resources into the Magnificent Seven. It was strange, actually. We grew the Magnificent Seven, but the other brands that were there were such favourites in this psyche that had been for people have been using them for 20, 30 years, that actually what also happened is you grew these, but the profitability here improved. Because you actually had the instance, and we have this in our market, where you think, actually, I'll reduce the trade spend on these products, and see if they'll gradually just sort of fade away. They tend not to fade away, but what they do tend to do is that they tend to become more profitable. And as they become more profitable, then you can feed it into the strategic brands. And that's what's happened here. I mean, I think it was the first time ever that we had launched a product in the Super Bowl this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yes.
And we were able to do that because actually of the profit that had been generated out of the efficiencies that had been coming from some of those more dominant brands.
Okay, question? Looks like people are just hungry at this point.
Including me.
Okay, one last one then, Warren.
Can you talk a little bit about the Kit Kat brand in the US? Obviously, Hershey had the rights for the Kit Kat brand.
Yes, we know.
In the US.
I won't be a moment.
It wasn't actually the obvious question. It was just asking how the brand is actually doing in the US, and how does the royalty actually work from Hershey to you? I.e., if the brand improves its sales, does the royalty actually trickle up, or is it kind of fixed?
We actually get a percentage on what is sold. The brand, in terms of Kit Kat, the royalty is not fixed. It's based on a percentage. The brand is doing reasonably well.
Yeah.
Clearly, if we had it, but it'd be doing a lot better. No, I jest. But I mean, the brand's doing well, and it's well regarded. I think one of the things that we'd love to see is that brand being extended the way it's extended elsewhere around the world into different sizes and formats without going too far over the top. But they also, are responsible for other brands outside of Kit Kat. It's one of those things when you walk in and you see Kit Kat and it sits with somebody else, it just doesn't feel right. But we knew that when we actually acquired the Rowntree's business many years ago, and so that's the where we are really.
Yeah, we respect all our competitors, be it Mars, Hershey, or Starbucks. They make us better.